Welcome back to my channel Celeb Buzz. Please share and subscribe and press the bell icon for new updates.
He hated him. Not in the way Hollywood stars throw shade on red carpets. Not in interviews. Not in headlines. No, this was deeper. Quieter. The kind of hate that doesn't shout. It sleeps inside you for years. And when you heard his name, Gregory Peck, Rory Calhoun would go silent. Eyes harden. Mouth tighten. Like someone had opened a wound he'd learned to hide. To the world, Gregory Peck was dignity in motion. The quiet hero. The man who made doing the right thing look noble, effortless. But to Rory, he was a mask, a polished lie, and behind it, something he could never forgive. To understand that hate, you have to go back. Back to the boy Rory once was. Before the lights. Before the fame. Before the world knew his name. He was born Francis Timothy McCown on August 8, 1922, in Los Angeles. But nothing about his life was ever stable. His father, an Irish gambler named James McCown, was wild and unpredictable. And before Rory even turned one, James was gone, dead. The hole left behind would shape everything. His mother Elizabeth, strong, quiet, desperate, remarried. She hoped a new man would bring safety. But what he brought was something else. A cold hand, a sharp voice, and a childhood filled with bruises no one could see. The new stepfather was cruel, harsh, demanding. In a bid to force normalcy, Rory even took his stepfather's name, became Frank Durgin, but it didn't feel like him, not even close. The name was just a mask, one he wore because it was safer than showing the real scars. As a teenager, Rory drifted, got into trouble, petty crimes, stolen cars, fights in the streets of Santa Cruz, and then prison, 3 years, 4 grand theft and robbery. It should have been the end of him. Another lost kid chewed up by the system. But it wasn't, because fate, or maybe Hollywood, had other plans. After prison, Rory met Alan Ladd, a rising star who saw something raw in him, something real. Ladd introduced him to an agent, and suddenly, the convict from Santa Cruz was being groomed to be the next rugged leading man. A new name, a new face, a second chance. Rory Calhoun was born. On screen, he was tough, charismatic, dangerous. Women wanted him. Men respected him. And he liked that power. He liked finally being someone. But then came Gregory Peck. Clean-cut, polished, Harvard-educated. Everything Rory wasn't. And yet, they were cast in the same circles, auditioned for the same roles, photographed on the same studio lots. At first, it was just quiet resentment. Peck got the roles Rory wanted. Peck got the praise Rory never heard. Peck had a perfect image, and Rory knew how fake that image could be, because Rory had seen things. He knew the backstage truths, the affairs, the deals, the private moments that never made it to magazines. And what infuriated him most wasn't what Gregory did. It was what he pretended to be. The saint, the gentleman, the flawless moral hero. To Rory, it felt like a betrayal of everything real, everything hard-won, everything earned. There was a story, whispered but never confirmed. A woman, a betrayal, something personal. Rory never spoke of it directly, but those close to him said it changed things. He never looked at Gregory the same way again. Never spoke his name without bitterness. Years passed. Peck won an Oscar for To Kill a Mockingbird. The world applauded. Rory stayed silent. But behind closed doors, he'd vent. He'd scoff at the interviews. He'd laugh at the idea that Gregory Peck was the moral conscience of Hollywood. He plays men with integrity. Rory once said, "But I've seen the man behind the act." It wasn't jealousy. It was betrayal, not of a career, but of truth. Rory Calhoun had spent his whole life clawing out of shadows, fighting to be seen, to be known, not as perfect, but as real. And Gregory walked through doors Rory had to break down, doors that slammed shut when Rory's past came up. The mugshot, the prison record, the scars. But Gregory's sins, if there were any, never saw daylight. That was the part Rory couldn't let go. Not that Gregory Peck succeeded. No, he never envied success in itself. Rory had tasted success, too. The kind that comes with posters on theater walls, with autographs, with women whispering your name in the dark. But what clawed at him, what never left him, was how Gregory succeeded while hiding behind a perfect smile. That polished grin, that calm voice, that image that never cracked. To the public, Peck was Atticus Finch, the man who stood for justice, who raised his children right, who walked into courtrooms and fought for truth. But Rory knew something the public didn't, or thought he did, because behind that calm exterior, behind the posture and the poise, he saw something else. He saw pretense. A man acting off camera, not just on it. And the worst part, he saw the world fall for it, time and time again. In the final years of his life, Rory grew quieter. He didn't go out as much, didn't party like he used to. The Hollywood wild child was aging. The edges were dulling. The fire inside had become embers. But even then, even when his bones ached and the cameras stopped rolling, one name could still ignite that old fire. Gregory Peck. It didn't matter how many years had passed. It didn't matter how many awards Peck had won. Every time his name was mentioned, Rory's eyes would shift, his jaw would tighten, and a silence would settle in like smoke. Not anger, not rage, something colder, deeper. When Gregory died in 2003, Hollywood mourned. Tributes poured in. Colleagues, presidents, entire generations of actors. They spoke about grace, about class, about his unmatched legacy. But from Rory, nothing. No public tribute. No interview and no posthumous praise. Just silence. It wasn't just absence. It was intentional. IT was loud in its quietness. And then came the rumor. A single envelope, slipped among the dozens of letters that arrived after Gregory's death. Typed and signed. No return address. Inside it, a single sentence. I never forgave you, but I wish I had. That's all it said. No explanation. No context. Just truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Final. Some dismissed it. Called it a cruel hoax. A fake. A fan's fantasy. But others, those who knew the history, they believed. They remembered how close Rory and Gregory once were. Not best friends, but bonded. By roles. By era. By ambition. And maybe, just maybe, by something more. A betrayal? A shared secret? A role stolen? A love triangle? No one knows for sure. But something happened. Something neither of them ever spoke about publicly. Because sometimes, hatred isn't really hatred. It's grief. Grief with no funeral. Pain that never found a voice. Regret dressed as resentment. It's friendship that turned into a cold, aching silence. Because pride was louder than forgiveness. And maybe, just maybe, Rory never truly hated Gregory at all. Maybe he hated the version of him that the world worshipped. The image that got painted so carefully, while the truth stayed hidden behind closed studio doors. Maybe he hated the silence between them, the moments that could have been mended, but weren't. The conversations never had, the apologies never offered, the phone calls never made. Or maybe he hated himself, the part of him that still cared, that still remembered, that still wished things had gone differently. Because time doesn't erase pain. It just buries it, layer after layer, until one day, it comes up in ways you never expect. A word, a photo, a funeral, a letter. This is Hollywood, where the cameras only show what they're allowed to, not what's real, not what hurts, only what fits the frame, what sells, what survives the edit, where smiles are rehearsed, choreographed like scenes, timed to perfection. Because in Hollywood, sincerity is risky, and vulnerability is a gamble, where legends aren't born, they're manufactured, in boardrooms and backlots, shaped by publicists and studio heads, polished, rehearsed, and sold to the world like fairy tales. And the truth? It's rarely welcome here. It lives in hushed conversations, buried beneath headlines, tucked behind agents and contracts, and burned in studio fireplaces before it ever reaches the press. Here, men wear tuxedos to hide the bruises underneath. They walk carpets dyed red with the blood of their sacrifices, smiling through grief, through failure, through betrayal. They read scripts about loyalty, honor, brotherhood, lines that speak of justice and courage. But off-screen, they've forgotten how those words feel. Or maybe they just don't believe in them anymore. Because sometimes the only role left to play is the one where you pretend everything's fine, even when it's not, even when the person standing beside you, laughing, posing, clinking glasses, is the one you once considered a friend and no longer trust. Here, two men can walk the same red carpet, stand on the same set, smile for the same cameras, say the right things to the same microphones, and still be galaxies apart. Hearts turned to stone, wounds never spoken aloud, 1,000 moments never shared again. That's what happened to Rory Calhoun and Gregory Peck, two icons, two legends, two men who were once connected by talent, by timing, by the cruel and beautiful machine of Hollywood itself. Both gifted, both magnetic, both flawed in their own ways, but remembered for very different reasons. Gregory was the face of goodness, the calm hero, the man who told the world what it meant to stand for what's right. And Rory was the rebel, rougher, grittier, realer, a man who clawed his way up from the dirt with blood still under his fingernails. He didn't come from privilege. He came from pain, from prison cells and broken homes, from fists and silence, from a world that never handed him anything. And maybe that's why the two could never truly see eye to eye, because where one learned to smile through the cracks, the other never learned to hide them. Maybe that's why Rory hated Gregory, not for what he did, but for what he represented. Perfection, Polish, the illusion of virtue, because Rory had seen things, felt things, suffered things, and to him, Gregory's calm, noble mask wasn't admirable. It was unbearable. But perhaps, in some quiet, aching way, they were always tied to one another, bound not by friendship, but by tension, by unsaid words, by that one moment, whatever it was, that neither of them could take back. The years passed. Time softened the edges for most, but not for Rory. When Gregory Peck passed away in 2003, Hollywood lit candles. Tributes rolled in like waves. Hearts broke. Legacies were praised. But from Rory, nothing. No interview. No speech. No memories shared on late-night TV. Just silence. Heavy. Deliberate. Louder than any words. And then came the rumor. Whispers in studio hallways. Speculations in smoky rooms. A letter. Typed. And signed. No stamp. No trace. Found among the many tributes mailed to the Peck family. Inside a single line. I never forgave you, but I wish I had. Some say it was fake. A hoax. A melodramatic myth. But those who knew, those who had watched the quiet bitterness grow over decades, they believed. They knew Rory. They knew how he held things in. How he never let go. How he carried his past like a second skin. Because sometimes hatred isn't hatred. It's grief. It's the echo of a broken bond. It's love that turned to rust when left unattended. It's a story with no proper ending. And maybe Rory didn't hate Gregory at all. Maybe he hated the mask, the myth, the silence that grew between them. Or maybe he hated the version of himself that still cared, that still looked back, that still wondered what if. Because pain doesn't vanish when the spotlight fades. It lingers. It festers. It hides in memories, in old film reels, in letters never signed. This is Hollywood, a place built on illusion, a world where the bright lights rarely reach the darkest corners, where the greatest performances aren't always on screen. They happen behind closed doors, in trailers, in dressing rooms, in the pauses between takes, where legends are made And sometimes they're made up, and when the credits roll, what's left isn't always truth. Sometimes it's just the best version of a lie. So if this story moved you, if it stirred something inside you, a memory, a regret, a name you still whisper in your mind late at night, don't let it stay silent, because silence doesn't heal. It just hides. And the truth, it finds its way out eventually. In words, in stories, in questions left unanswered. So before the curtain falls, speak, like this video. Subscribe to Celeb Buzz for more stories like this. The ones buried beneath the glitter. The ones wrapped in mystery and memory. The ones Hollywood forgot to finish. And in the comments, tell us what you believe. Was that letter really from Rory Calhoun? What happened between him and Gregory Peck that was so deep it could never be forgiven? And more than anything, have you ever held on to something too long? Because sometimes the stories we tell about others are the ones we're still trying to understand. About ourselves,